What if I told you the thing destroying your life right now isn't laziness? It's not a lack of money. It's not a lack of talent. It's not even a lack of opportunity. What if the real trap, the one silently stealing years from your life, was something you actually enjoyed? Something your own brain rewards you for. Something that feels like creativity, feels like ambition, feels like vision, but is actually killing you. Stay with me, because by the end of this video you will never look at your own mind the same way again. Chapter 1. The boy who lived everywhere except his own life. Tyler was 20 years old, and by every measure that matters on paper, he had everything. He was more creative than anyone you've ever met in your life. He could build entire worlds inside his head in seconds. In his mind, he had already recorded a full album, founded a company, stood on stages in front of thousands, commanding the room. He had already lived the life most people only wish for. There was just one problem. None of it existed. In the real world, the one where time actually moves, Tyler could barely finish a single task. He could barely hold a conversation, and late at night, he could barely look himself in the mirror. Because while he was dreaming, life kept moving forward without him. And the world, without an ounce of mercy, did not wait. Now here's what I want you to notice before we go any further. Because in 2010, two Harvard researchers named Matthew Killingsworth and Daniel Gilbert ran a study that quietly changed everything we thought we knew about the human mind. They built an app. The app would randomly interrupt people throughout their day and ask just 3 questions. What are you doing right now? What are you thinking about? And how are you feeling? Simple enough, right? The results were shocking. For almost 47% of the day, people's minds were somewhere completely different from what they were actually doing. Nearly half of their waking lives, gone, spent in a mental world that didn't exist. And here's the part that should stop you cold. It didn't matter where the mind wandered. Good thoughts, bad thoughts, neutral thoughts. It didn't matter. When the mind was elsewhere, people consistently reported feeling less happy. A wandering mind is a suffering mind, but most people don't know that. Most people believe daydreaming is a gift, a sign of creativity, a mark of depth, of intelligence, and it is precisely that belief that turns daydreaming into one of the most dangerous silent traps a human being can fall into. Tyler grew up in Portland, Oregon, son of a mechanic and a schoolteacher. Quiet neighborhood, simple home, no great tragedy to point to. But even as a small child, Tyler had a strange and unusual ability. He could disappear. Not physically, mentally. In math class, he was already composing music. At the family dinner table, he was performing on stage. Standing in line at the grocery store, he was giving interviews to famous journalists who had traveled to hear his story, and everyone around him thought it was adorable. Tyler is so creative, they'd say. That boy is going places. But Tyler didn't go anywhere. He stayed exactly where he was. By age 20, he had enrolled in 3 different university programs, dropped out of all 3, started 2 music projects, a YouTube channel, and a small design business. None of them survived longer than 3 months. And here's what haunted everyone who knew him. It wasn't a lack of talent. Anyone who saw what Tyler created was floored by the quality. So what was it? What was actually happening to him? That answer didn't come until a cold October afternoon, sitting in the office of a psychologist named Dr. Kakashi. But before we get there, you need to understand what was happening inside Tyler's brain. Because once you hear this, you will understand yourself in a way you never have before. Every time it came time to really work, to sit down, execute, face the friction of the actual process, Tyler's mind would escape. It would race forward to the finished version, the perfect result, the applause, the success. And in that imagined place, there was no struggle, no rejection, no failure, only pure clean glory. And his brain loved it. Neuroscientists call this mental reward simulation. When you vividly imagine something good happening to you, your brain's dopamine system responds almost identically to when the event actually happens. Tyler's brain was getting rewarded without him having to do a single real thing. And the more that happened, the less motivated he became to act in reality. Why go through the pain of the process when the fantasy already delivers the pleasure? This is not a character flaw. This is not weakness. This is neuroscience. A cycle of addiction as real and as powerful as any other. Over time, Tyler's symptoms got worse. He couldn't stay present in conversations anymore. Friends said he wasn't really there. Relationships faded. Jobs slipped away. Life was bleeding out quietly day by day. Then one afternoon, after losing his 3rd job in 2 years for what his boss called lack of focus and commitment, Tyler sat alone in his room, staring at the ceiling. And for the first time, he felt the full weight of what was happening. This wasn't just distraction. This was escape. Constant, systematic, addictive, a never-ending flight from life itself. That was the day he decided to get help, and what he was about to discover in that psychologist's office would change everything. Chapter 2. The man with the wooden frame. Dr. Kakashi, Japanese-American, 2nd generation. Small, simple office in downtown Portland. No plaques on the wall, no diplomas displayed, just a single wooden frame with 1 sentence written in English. The present moment is the only place where life actually happens. Tyler walked in for his first session. He'd told the receptionist he had difficulty focusing. He expected forms, assessments, symptom checklists. Instead, Dr. Kakashi simply looked at him and asked, "Where are you right now, Tyler?" Tyler glanced around the room. "Here, in your office." Kakashi shook his head slowly. "I mean, where is your mind right now?" at this exact second, and Tyler froze, because at that very moment, sitting in a therapist's office, asking for help, he realized his mind was already rehearsing the story of how he would tell his friends that he went to therapy. He was in the future again. "Understood," said Kakashi, with a calm, quiet smile. "Let's start here." Over the weeks that followed, Kakashi introduced Tyler to 3 ancient Japanese concepts, 3 ideas that had no direct English translation because the English language had never needed to name what they described. The first was called Mushin. Kakashi wrote the kanji on a piece of paper. "Mind without mind," he said. "It is one of the central concepts of Zen philosophy and Japanese martial arts. Mushin is the state when the mind is completely present, no random wandering, no calculating the future, no replaying the past. Pure, immediate presence." Tyler frowned. "But isn't that impossible? The mind always thinks something. The mind always generates thoughts," Kakashi corrected. "But Mushin is not about suppressing them. It is about not getting lost in them, noticing when you've been pulled away, and returning, always returning." Then he said something Tyler never forgot. "The samurai who mentally rehearses his strike while the enemy is already advancing, dies. Not for lack of skill, for excess of mind." But Kakashi wasn't finished, because there was a second concept, and this one Kakashi said was the very heart of everything. He called it Zanshin. What is Zanshin, and why did Kakashi say it was the single most important thing Tyler needed to understand? Stay with me. The literal translation, Kakashi said, his residual mind. But the real meaning is this continuous, alert presence after an action is complete. It is the state of a warrior who has finished a strike and has not gone to the future to celebrate, has not gone to the past to analyze, but has remained completely here. Tyler was quiet for a long moment. "It's the exact opposite of what I do," he said softly. "Exactly," said Kakashi. "You finish a sentence and you're already 10 sentences ahead. You begin a task and within 30 seconds you're already celebrating a result that doesn't even exist yet. Zanshin trains the mind to stay, to not run." Weeks later, Kakashi brought one final concept. They were having tea at the start of the session, a habit Kakashi had introduced deliberately, when the psychologist said, almost to himself, "Ichigo Ichie." "What does that mean?" Tyler asked. "One moment, one encounter." Kakashi held the cup gently. "The idea is this: every single moment of your life is completely unrepeatable. This instant here now, this teeth, will never exist again. It is gone before you can even name it." Tyler looked down at his own cup. "When a person truly understands this," Kakashi continued, "the mind stops running, not out of discipline, out of reverence. Why would you ever want to be somewhere else, when you realize that this place right now is the only one that truly exists?" Then he said something that landed like a quiet earthquake. "Daydreaming is not dreaming. It is desertion. It is abandoning the only moment you will ever truly have." Chapter 3. What science says. What Kakashi was teaching wasn't mysticism, it wasn't poetry. It was ancient philosophy meeting modern neuroscience at exactly the right intersection. Dr. Daniel J. Siegel, clinical professor of psychiatry at UCLA, explains that intentionally training presence, what the Japanese have called Mushin and Zanshin for centuries, literally rewires the brain. New neural connections form in the prefrontal cortex. The brain is physically rebuilt to hold attention, to remain present. Neuroplasticity in the service of what samurai have practiced for 1,000 years. Dr. Ellen Langer, Harvard psychologist and pioneer in the study of what she calls mindlessness, the state of mental autopilot, has spent decades documenting what an absent mind costs us. In her most cited research, she showed that people operating in mindlessness make significantly worse decisions, commit more errors, and report dramatically lower satisfaction with their own lives. A present mind is not a spiritual luxury, she has said. It is the basic condition for a functional life. And Dr. Roy Baumeister, one of the world's leading social psychologists, has studied what he calls mental time travel, the uniquely human habit of living in the past or future inside our minds. He found that while this ability is responsible for much of human intelligence and planning, when it becomes compulsive, as it did for Tyler, it hijacks the exact cognitive resources needed to function in the present. The mind can visit the future. The problem begins when it decides to live there. Chapter 4. The night everything changed. 3 months into working with Kakashi, Tyler had the experience he would later describe as the moment his life stopped being a rough draft. He was working on a design project, another beginning that, by the pattern of his entire life, should have been abandoned within weeks. And he felt it. That old familiar pull. The mind beginning to drift. The fantasy rising up like warm water. The imagined version of the finished product, the applause. He noticed it, not with anger, not with shame, he simply noticed, and he returned, back to the screen, back to the cursor, back to the single line he was drawing at that exact moment, back to the only place where anything real could happen. His mind drifted again, he returned again, and again. Week 1 passed, week 2, week 3, then one night at 11 p.m. Tyler looked at his screen, and he saw something he had never seen in any project in his entire life. The end, not in his imagination, on the screen, real, finished, done. He sat in silence for several minutes. He wasn't celebrating in his head. He wasn't rehearsing how he'd tell people. He wasn't already planning the next thing. He was just there. And in that moment he felt something he had never felt before about himself. Not pride in a fantasy, pride in a reality he had actually built. Chapter 5. The The secret they never tell you, but here is the part most people never hear, and it matters. Not all daydreaming is the same. Researchers Benjamin Baird and Jonathan Schooler from the University of California drew a critical distinction between two completely different types of mental wandering. The first is what Tyler experienced: maladaptive daydreaming, compulsive, repetitive, functioning as an escape hatch from the discomfort of the present, a drug, an addiction. The second is something different entirely: a light, brief mental rest, the kind where the mind steps back from a task momentarily, then returns with new clarity. Studies show this type of wandering is actually linked to creative insight, complex problem solving, and memory consolidation. The difference between them is not the content of the dream, it is the intention and the control. The goal is not to kill your imagination. The goal is to be the one who decides when to enter it and when to leave. And this brings us to the final concept Kakashi gave Tyler. The one he said was more important than all the others combined. He called it kokoro, a Japanese word with no clean English translation. Kokoro is the unity of heart, mind, and spirit, not three separate things but one whole, integrated thing. According to the Japanese perspective, compulsive daydreaming is a symptom of a fractured kokoro. The mind is here, the heart is elsewhere, the spirit is wandering with no direction. When you rebuild your kokoro, when heart, mind, and presence finally align, the fantasy loses its power as an escape route. Not because life becomes perfect, but because you've learned to be fully present inside your actual life, exactly as it is. Tyler today is not the version from his fantasies. He is not on huge stages. He has not become a millionaire. The famous journalists have not come knocking, but he is building it. Present, real, piece by piece. He released his first complete project, then his second. He is on his third now, each one better than the last. And here is what is quietly remarkable: his real life has started to become more interesting than the fantasies ever were, because reality has something fantasy never will: texture, resistance, the specific, irreplaceable flavor of the hard things that were actually done. Fantasy is flat, fantasy is empty, fantasy needs nothing from you. But the life you are building, that one needs you, completely, here now. And only you can decide to show up for it. The present moment is not the obstacle between you and your life. The present moment is your life. So here is the question I want to leave you with. In which version of your life have you been spending most of your time? The one you imagine, or the one you build? If this video resonated with you, subscribe, leave a comment below. Did you recognize yourself in Tyler's story? At what point in your life did daydreaming cross the line into escapism? And if you want to go deeper, watch the next video on screen, built with the same care you found here today. Thank you for staying until the end. See you in the next one.